This episode of Warp 5 is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the non-profit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode or any other, please join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
This is Phyllis Strong, writer-producer on Star Trek Enterprise, and you're listening to Warp 5 on Trek FM.
How we doing, Trip? Ready when you are. Prepare for warp.
Course laid in, sir. Request permission to get underway. Let's go.
Welcome, boomers, to another episode of Warp 5 Trek FM's dedicated Enterprise podcast. I am but one of your hosts, Brandi, Jackola, and with me, as always, is my good friend Patrick Devlin. Patrick, how are you on this fine evening?
I'm doing great. Beautiful weather out. Went and hung out at the beach after work, so I'm doing good. How are you?
It's ridiculously hot here. There was no hanging out outside at all.
No, it was perfect. It was like 78 degrees.
Shut your mouth.
A little bit of cloud cover, but not too much.
Oh, I long for cloud cover to block out the sun.
What temperature was it where you were?
It was 95.
Past hell. Got it.
Yep. And it's going to get up to 100 on Wednesday, so looking forward to that, she said sarcastically. Very obviously missing is our good friend Brandon Shamatella. He is on his way to Risa for some R&R, and we know nothing good happens on Risa unless you're Hoshi.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Hoshi is the only person that I've ever seen that didn't encounter a massive problem on their way to, from, or on
Risa. Yeah.
Risa.
It's the worst vacation spot ever. It's like the worst Club Med ever.
And people still keep going there.
Flock there by the millions.
Yeah. So heaven only knows when we'll see Brandon again. He might get kidnapped and brainwashed. I just don't know at this point. Anything could happen.
True.
So we have a fun episode planned. Well, I wouldn't say fun. I guess fun's not the right word. We have an interesting episode planned for you tonight. Today, this morning, this afternoon, whatever time you're listening to it, because podcasts are an on-demand sort of thing. And before we get to that, do we have any comments on our last released episode, Patrick?
Yes, we do have comments from the Babel Conference for our episode 152, which was Ode to Spiner. And Patrick Carlin says, I know the canon of books is debatable, but in the Mirror Universe story, Age of the Empress, we see the MU counterpart of Arik Sung, who is, spoilers, killed by the end of the story. Time-wise, that's not too far ahead, maybe a year ahead of where this is. And in Mirror Universe story, the worst of both worlds, from the same anthology book as Age of Empress, we see the Mirror Universe Noonien Sung meet Mirror Universe Picard. So going on that, he would have had a kid well before his time with the augments. So he's saying that the kid was already born,
but in the
pre being arrested, right? I guess.
But that's in the Mirror Universe.
But as we see, the Mirror Universe tends to mirror our universe timeline-wise.
Not always.
That's true. But they've been bringing that closer and closer together.
I would think that the Mirror Universe would be all about augments.
That's probably true, too. But no, I mean just in character development. Like, typically, Mirror Universe characters are born the same time and live the same time. Some die a little differently. But even we see it in Discovery with Georgiou still ends up with Michael Burnham, so I guess that can make sense. But again, like he said, it's in the books, so take it for what you want. Either it counts or it doesn't. He also wrote, also with Archer's brief trip into open space at the start of the augments, I was 100% expecting a particular scene from The Last Jedi to be brought up again. And I don't care what anyone else says. I love that scene. All right, so everyone loves that scene except for me, apparently.
No, Brandon doesn't like it either, I don't think.
Okay, maybe. But I don't know. It's just so science wrong and so easily disproved. But I get why people like it, and I get why it doesn't have to be scientifically right. So.
Well, see, the thing is that Star Wars isn't science fiction. It's fantasy.
Yeah, well, that's true. But we're talking about Star Trek, too.
Yeah, but Star Trek is more based in science than Star Wars is.
No, I know. But either way, the flying around in space shouldn't happen.
No, it shouldn't, but we don't know for sure what would actually happen because we don't have anyone around that's been through it. So we can't really say for sure how it would happen or what would happen or if it's possible. So until proven otherwise, it's plausible, but not necessarily fact.
Right. Okay.
Because I can be diplomatic.
And then we also have a comment from Erin Mills who says, for some bizarre reason, this was the only episode I would get of Enterprise, and that did not endear me to it. Also, I was never fond of lore, so once I figured out soon was basically lore, I was out. If you hated lore, I could see this being a problem for you these sets of episodes.
Yeah, but the thing is that Arik Soon really had a conscience. He really was not about just wanton death and destruction of anyone who didn't like his augments.
Well, yeah, but
he tried to.
That's if you got that far.
Yeah, if you got that far.
If you saw lore immediately and went, oh, never mind, click, then you never got to the part where you had a conscience. So.
Yeah, well, and it was always there. It's just sometimes very smart people will get lost in what could be.
Yes.
That they don't stop to think about whether or not that should be.
Yes, absolutely. And we have one last comment from Brandon A. Cowles, who just wrote, I just assumed he got out of prison and had a kid, which is kind of what we came up with as our headcanon was. He got out of prison and had a kid. Because he doesn't mention a kid at any point during these augments or anything, so you would think he hadn't had, even though Patrick Harlan makes a compelling argument otherwise, you wouldn't think he had a kid and never talked about him when meeting his children again.
Perhaps he had a falling out. If he had a kid before being imprisoned, it's possible they had a major falling out, and they might have disowned each other.
It's possible.
So he would never speak of said child, but we just don't know. But it's there are ways that is possible for him to have progeny. So we're all good.
Yep. And that fixes the whole series for us. Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we do not have any new reviews this week.
Aww.
So, guys, go into Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and written review, please. We'll read even the bad ones, but I mean, not bad as in we think they're terrible, but bad as in you think we're terrible. But there's such a thing as constructive criticism. If you don't like us, that's okay. But you don't have to be mean about it.
Just tell us why.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing my Mr. Rogers voice right now, but
I don't know, but speaking of Mr. Rogers, do you know they just released a U.S. postage stamp of Mr. Rogers?
Yay!
Yeah. I don't know how that pertains to any of this, but yeah.
Because I mentioned Mr. Rogers.
Yes, true.
That pertains. We're all neighbors. All right, then, I guess it is time to go into the body of our episode, so to speak. We are taking a deep dive into the season 1 episode, Detained, which is kind of applicable to some stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah, a little bit, right? I mean, so just a very brief summary, because I'm not good at summaries of this episode. But basically, Archer and Mayweather are taken prisoner into a detention center. We don't know that actually at the start. We just know they wake up somewhere random. But they're taken into a detention center. Spoiler alert, Dean Stockwell shows up for this episode, so that's pretty cool to see those two together. But he's the colonel that's in charge of said detention center and basically lies through his teeth throughout the entire episode. And then there's
not completely, but most of it.
And then there's a breakout attempt. So we kind of have everything in here.
Little bit of everything, and metaphors that are not only referenced indirectly but directly as well. So
yeah, well, what's interesting about this episode is it held actually really good meaning when it originally aired, due to the the 9/11 and everything that was going on with that, and it still holds true today. So just for different reasons.
And we just humans that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I have made this point on another podcast recently. Did the Japanese internment camps teach us nothing? Did they really teach us nothing? And yet, here we are, doing the same thing again.
Well,
anyway.
So no, okay. So but let's go before we talk about that. Let's talk about when they wrote this episode. That was the fear, right? That we would end up with the exact same problem we had in World War II, because we had just had the 9/11 attacks a few years earlier. There were people attacking mosques and Muslims, and there was fear that somebody would think it was a bright idea to put them in internment camps to, quote unquote, protect them, which we hear more than once in this episode.
Oh, yes.
So okay, so the episode, we'll get into it in more detail later, but the episode opens with the cold open of Mayweather rolling over, seeing the captain looking out, and you see Suliban walking by. So when this happened, I thought they were captives actually, or somehow snuck into a Suliban city, right? Isn't that kind of what you felt in the very first scene? They didn't show any bars, they didn't show any guards, they just saw two Suliban like walking down the hallway and walking away.
Yeah, it looked to me like they were in some kind of cell because there were very few amenities in that room. And, my first jokey thought was, oh, gosh, you drank way too much and you don't know where you are now. But that was just my joke thought. But I wasn't sure what to think at the beginning because I thought, are they undercover trying to find out something about the Suliban and they got caught? But they're not dressed differently. They're still in their uniforms. So I was basically confused about what I thought of the cold open because I really just didn't have enough information yet.
Right, but this is like one of the things that Star Trek loves to do. They have prisons with no prison jumpsuits.
Yeah, right.
Because we find out later that they are in a detention center, but they go to their door in that cold open, and he even opens the door. So it's like, well, this is the worst prison ever if they're being held captive because they can just open the door. And this just seems to be like a common thread in Star Trek now. Like, no prison. Yeah, you get to wear your own clothes. Don't worry about it. I mean, you only got the one pair for the rest of your life, but cool. And doors that open all the time.
Yeah, but those doors certainly do not lead outside.
No, not this time. They have in other episodes, but not this one.
And they have a curfew, a very strict curfew, that if you break it, you get thrown into isolation.
Yeah, which is interesting because, okay, so, all right, about that scene, that's another great scene that pertains to both the Japanese internment camps, 9/11, and now. They had, when that happens, you see Archer stop the one Suliban, I can't remember his name, but he stops him and basically says to him, it's not right to do to your daughter. Don't make her a cabal. And he says, we're not. We're not all the same. You don't know what you're talking about, is basically what he's getting at. So you have Archer's preconceived notions of what a Suliban is, because the only ones he's ever met were cabal. And you have what's clearly the detention center believes, the race believes that all Suliban are going to become terrorists, right?
Yeah, the Tandarians.
Right.
Excuse me, Tandarians.
So they believe they're all going to become terrorists, whether they are or not now. And then they turn around, and in the middle of arguing, he starts to realize, wow, this guy's just like a regular guy. And they come in, they tell him this is the second time this week you've broken curfew, even though he was clearly just doing his laundry with his daughter. But they know each other's names. Like, they have a relationship with the guards as if they're almost buddies. He even says to the second guard, oh, just make sure she gets home okay. Like, that's just such a weird relationship, even for that situation.
They're trying to keep up the lie that this is for their protection. And so, yes, it is a police state that they're living in, but, they give them a few caveats here and there to make them feel like they're not, under constant scrutiny, when in actuality they are.
No, I understand that, but maybe because he has a daughter, he has to think differently.
Yeah.
But I know, like, me personally, if my kids were there, I guess it would be different. But if they weren't, I don't care what you give me. We're not going to be friends.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to be friends with me is if you open that door and let me out.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of them being buddies. It's a matter of being familiar with each other.
I still would.
But,
okay.
Yeah.
But so we see that first scene where they go get Archer and Mayweather, right? And that's when you first see Dean Stockwell, which was awesome because he was standing there with the little calculator. So it was just
it looked like his little pad that he used
when
to
he was
talk
Al,
to Ziggy.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh, they're back together. It's great. I mean, we only get them for one episode, so that sucks. But it was great to see. Unfortunately, that's the end of the happy part of having Al around. Everything's downhill from that moment on. And
he's really polite during that whole exchange.
Extremely.
So you think, oh well, his hands are tied by their strict regulations, and he's doing the best he can. Not so much.
Which is what we always hear, isn't it? We always hear, "I'm just following orders."
Yes,
the
so
Nazis
were the
said
Nazis.
The agents who put the Japanese Americans in internment camps said it. We have people saying it today, literally flat out saying, "We're just following orders." I mean, it's just a recurring thing throughout history that following orders. And I understand when you're in a military organization, that's kind of what you're supposed to do, but it can't always be an excuse.
Yeah, you can't use that to justify any of those previous examples ever. That's not a defense. Because guess what all the people who were in the Nuremberg trials said? I was just following orders.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to get. Like, everyone said that. So he's using the "I'm just following orders" excuse. Don't worry, it's 3 days. You'll be out of here. Blah 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 blah. And he goes on and he asks Archer. I think it's in this conversation. It might be in the next one. I think he asked it in both actually. And he says, "Oh no, it was this one where he starts it." He says, "We found you in our military zone." He goes, "You didn't notice?" And he's like, "I was curious." And he basically gives him...
We got an energy reading that we couldn't identify, and we were curious.
Right, so he basically gives him, a blow-off by basically saying, curiosity killed the cat. And he does that more than once in this episode as well. He says it here, and he'll say it the next time they run into each other. And then, ironically, he'll be curious. But we'll get into that when we get there. So he hits him with that, and then he says, "Don't worry, 3 days, there'll be a transport." Archer says, "Can I talk to my crew?" He says, "Sorry, I can't." Archer gives him an out at that point and says, "Oh, regulations, right?" So again with the "I'm just following orders, sorry." Look, if you know it's a human rights violation, you can find a way to circumvent those regulations, now couldn't you?
Yeah.
Especially one as simple as letting him call his ship that's in orbit.
Yeah. And, well, they weren't there yet.
Well, nearby.
But they were nearby. And the thing is, he does say, "I will call your ship in myself and I will advise them of the situation." And he does do that. And that's the last thing he does that he says he's going to do. After that, he'll say he's going to do things, and then he gives the Enterprise a completely different story than what's actually going on.
Yes, but I mean, to me, he's been lying the whole time because he knew he was only going to be honest if he got the information he wanted. Mm-hmm. So he knew up front that he was lying about the 3 days. It might have worked out okay, but there was no way he was intending on sending him if he didn't get the information about the Suliban, if he didn't get the information about Selleck. And he knew that already. I mean, again, so now we move forward in this episode, right? And we have where now Archer and this Suliban are starting a relationship. He's eating lunch with him. The daughter goes, "You look like them," and he tells her to go play with her friends. And then his buddy comes in and basically tells him, "I don't trust you. I hate you because of who you look like." So now we have both races doing the same thing to each other, to certain degrees, and that comes to a head later with Mayweather. But while this is happening, they come and get Archer again, but just Archer this time. And Archer goes to talk to the colonel, and this is when the colonel loses it, because he turns around and he tells him basically that I want information. I had my Secret Service look into you, basically, and we have all this information on you. You know about Broken Bow. You know about the Suliban who got on your ship, and you know about this, you know about that. I want information. Tell me information. And when he won't answer him, he says, it'd be a shame if you missed that transport in 3 days. The next one's in 60. And again, he tells him, because he said, why are you getting friendly with him? He goes, I'm sorry, I'm curious. He goes, yeah, I understand the, you wanted to be an explorer and everything, but, curiosity, not the best thing for you. But I'm curious about what you know. And it's basically what he says exactly. Mm-hmm. So it's cool for him to be curious, but not anyone else, because then they might find out the truth.
Yep. And he does not want that.
No, and this is exactly the wrong way to treat a captain of Starfleet, because if you tell them not to be curious and I want answers, we've seen time and time again, they're going to find out why you want answers so bad. What are you hiding?
To be fair, the Tandarians have never come across Starfleet before. They don't know.
Well,
they
true.
don't know the indomitable spirit of humans' needs
snowman?
to discover new things. The indomitable snowman, the Indomitus Rex, and the indomitable snowman had a baby.
Yes, and Starfleet.
Sorry, yeah, and it was Starfleet, indomitable, indomitable Starfleet.
So, right, and this is where all the poop hits the fan, basically.
Mm-hmm.
For Dean Stockwell, actually. Because now more than ever, Archer wants to know, and he starts hatching a plan to escape.
Yeah.
We see them talk to the ship, and we keep getting the same old, I'm doing it because I have orders.
Yeah. And T'Pol, I don't think fell for it for a second, but she was trying to be diplomatic, because Vulcans are known for, ask questions first, then shoot later, rather than the other way around.
Right. I thought those were good. Those two were good playing off each other, her and Trip.
Yes.
Because Trip was all about shoot first and we'll figure it out tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And
she was more about gathering information and seeing what Grat was going to tell her and what he was holding back. And she was one cool customer. She was the best person he could have talked to in this instance, because she knows early on he is not on the level.
Right. I mean, look, obviously what she's doing is the right way to do it. I would definitely be Trip. So, but the only thing that bothers me with the way she does it is when she's arguing with Trip, she's the commanding officer. Mm-hmm. So just put your foot down. End of story. There's no reason, and they do this, they write her this way a few times, and it bothers me, where she goes, and I think that's the way Captain Archer would want it. As if that needs to hold any more weight. No, I'm the commanding officer. I said we're not shooting first. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that she is still, it's still season 1. People still don't necessarily trust her judgment, per se. They still don't know that much about her, because they've never had this much exposure to working on a starship with a Vulcan. And so that influences their decisions. And so this tension between her and Trip is understandable, because Trip is gung-ho. And T'Pol is like, we cannot go in there shooting. And even at the very end, even the whole way of getting everything resolved and getting them out of there does not involve going in with guns blazing.
And it should have. It really should have.
That's what you always think, because
I know.
you just want people to die.
Well, bad people, not good ones.
Yeah, bad people. But
right.
if the bad people die, they're not alive to suffer their failures.
They're also not alive to make the mistake again. I mean, oh well.
Fair point.
If they're alive, I gotta feed them.
Yeah.
That's true. Bye. We're not talking about little things. We're talking about, genocide and human rights violations here.
Yeah. Or Suliban rights violations.
Yes, but yes. So, okay, but now they show this, and here's the part where this becomes a little more current. During that scene, just before he talks to the colonel, they show that the Suliban, I can't remember his name.
Danik.
Thank you, Danik. Danik gets a letter from his wife because she's trying to appeal to get back to him, and they keep denying her. So, it's him and his daughter, but his wife is split off in another detention center somewhere, and they will not put the family together, even though they're claiming, we do this for them. Because on the first day after the cabal attacked, 14 were killed in a single day. Which seems, I'm sorry, that seems like a really low number. Mm-hmm. They said it as if I was supposed to be like, 14? I can't believe 14.
Did you mean to put 1 million after that?
Yeah, like...
Or 1,000? Or...
I know. they're trying to make a comparison to 9/11, and they used the number 14. Which is, I get it, this is the reaction to 9/11, not 9/11 itself, because when they do 9/11, it's 7 million, which is ridiculous.
Yep.
High, but still, like, I don't know. They could have come up with a better number than 14 in a day, right?
Well, it's all about
like, even if they just said in a single attack, that would have been better.
Yeah.
Than a day.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those weird things but that's the thing. They're an alien culture. We don't know what a lot is to them. And 14, maybe they've never lost 14 people in one day before.
It's possible. I mean, maybe their murder rate is like 1 in a decade.
Because of their freaking military state.
But see, that's the thing. But they weren't before this, right? I mean, they're not this way to their own people. It's only the Suliban. And to this point, later on, I think differently of them. But at this point, I think that the Colonel is actually the most dangerous a person can be, because I think he really believes he's helping them.
Absolutely.
Which makes him more dangerous than if he is a raging lunatic who just wants to imprison them. Because then there's no question whether he's helping them or not. He just likes doing it. And that's okay, because I can work with that. But when you really believe you're right, you're going to fight harder to keep it.
Oh, absolutely. He believes he's a hero. He absolutely believes he's a hero.
Right. And actually, I do think at the end a little differently, because I mean, I still think he thinks he's doing what's good for them, but for himself, it just changes a little bit. But yeah, he's can't say that on the radio. He's bat poop crazy.
He's bat guano crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's out of his
guano
mind.
Crazy.
He really believes he's helping them, which is what everyone said to themselves during World War II. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. So now he starts threatening the Enterprise. Right after the back and forths with giving them all this information, telling them it's going to be delayed a few days, just be patient. He's real nice every time he talks to them. This is when T'Pol finally realizes there's something wrong. This just isn't the case.
I think she knew before, but she'd had enough at that point. She's just like, nope, I'm out.
See, now, okay, I thought she believed there was going to be a legit legal proceeding at that point, in the beginning, because she even says to Trip, let's just go, get them back. We can't interfere with their legal system. So I think she felt that this was just a misunderstanding and that he was in a regular prison.
Well, maybe after the first conversation, but not in any conversation thereafter.
No, I agree. So, after that, they went all to pieces.
She was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt at first, but that disappeared very quickly.
And then at this point now, she's like sneaking up on them and dropping in, they're sending a communicator in, and that's when it gets good, because now we get to see just exactly who these people really are. I mean, not that we haven't already seen it, but they find this thing in Mayweather's room, in his pocket, and they beat him senseless.
Oh, they really beat the crap out of him.
This is where the turning point is, where the other Suliban start to believe that they're not working for the detention center and that they are going to try and help them get out.
Yeah, and who can blame the Suliban for being cautious? Because, you have these people that you've never heard of, that you've never seen, that look very similar to your captors. I wouldn't trust them either at first. And that, again, is a whole thing about judging someone by their race or appearance. And that's the Suliban were doing that to Archer and Mayweather, but Archer and Mayweather were also doing that to the Suliban at first.
So it's not a great parallel, because the humans are actually different races. If they had someone of the same race, or if, let's say that whatever they made the plot where Archer and Mayweather looked like them because they were infiltrating and got caught or something, it would make more sense, because that's a very big commentary on, certain races don't know who to trust once the poop hits the fan. Like once this starts to happen, you might have all good intentions, but they're not going to trust you because of the color of your skin or because of you being an American during the internment camp. The Japanese aren't going to trust regular Americans, even if they are there for their best interest, because all they know is too many of them are rounding us up and throwing us in prisons. Mm-hmm. So, it was different. They did look similar, but they didn't look identical, so it kind of throws that off. But I think that's what they were trying to get at in that part of the story. But now this guy believes them, and they found a bunch of people that are going to help, and they end up turning Reed into a Suliban.
He looked good as a Suliban.
He does. Now, what do you think of the Suliban's makeup in general?
It looks itchy.
Very, right?
It looks like it would be really bad for your skin. What it looks like to me is that someone basically took a bowl of oatmeal and started spreading it on the skin and let it dry and crackle and then put coloring on top of it.
I never thought of it that way. Okay.
That's kind of what it looks like to me.
I guess it does. But
dried oatmeal.
It's just a little weird. Like when the guy turns his neck and stuff, it's obvious like a latex suit at that point. And he gets all wrinkly. Like, everyone's like an old man at that point. But, whatever. I think they do a great job, except that they stay a little too far away from the eyes, and you see too much regular skin color there.
Well, that could just be a feature of the Suliban.
It could be. I mean, that's definitely how they portray it. I would just rather if they didn't. I think it would look better if they didn't have that feature.
Well, and they can still go in there with different color and color that skin, but it's difficult when you're getting that close to the eye, because there's not a lot of stuff that you can use that close to the eye that won't give you infections and crap. So I understand why they would be more careful around the eye area, because you don't want to accidentally blind your actors. No,
that would be bad too.
Yeah,
that would be bad too. So, but Reed does look good except for the nose. Apparently, according to Phlox, he doesn't like the nose. That was a great scene too, because all you see is the little red light, and he's like, "Oh, I'm almost ready. I just don't like the nose." And even before he said nose, because that was supposed to be like the hint he's making a Suliban. But even before he said that, you knew he was making a Suliban, right?
Absolutely.
You just didn't know who he was making into a Suliban. But by process of elimination, we had just seen Trip and DePaul, so it really kind of had to be Reed, right?
Absolutely, and
it's even so.
Yeah, even so, the first time I saw him, it took me a second, and I'm like, okay, look at the eyes. Yep, that's Malcolm. So.
Yeah. Well, no, once you see him, it's obvious that it's Malcolm. And I like it because he comes in talking like a Suliban, and Mayweather's like, whoa, who are you? And he's like, what, you don't recognize me? It was like, it is Malcolm. Got it. So that was a pretty cool scene, the way they pulled that one off. And then, so this scene always bothered me a lot. What did you think of the explosives diagonally along the wall that Malcolm turns on? Like, they're harassing them. No one knows that this guy, this is why you need prison jumpsuits, you dummies. Nobody knows he doesn't belong there. Mm-hmm. Right? So he's just an extra prisoner. There's 90 people, prisoners in the place now. Well, 92. There's 89 Suliban plus Archer and Mayweather, and now Reed. And nobody notices there's an extra body because they don't have jumpsuits, so he doesn't have a number or anything.
And probably all Suliban look alike to them.
Of course they do. Mm-hmm. That's what we're getting at here, right? They're all identical. There's a boy version and a girl version, and that's it. And but okay, so he plants the devices on the wall. He had already planted the devices on the wall, and he clicks them on, and they start lighting up green. And 3 idiot guards walk up, green flashing lights on a wall. Mm-hmm. Does that not bother you?
No, it doesn't really, because...
You never heard of bombs?
Yeah, they've heard of bombs, but they couldn't fathom that anyone in there could possibly have gotten those bombs in.
Why not? They got a tricorder in. Well, a communicator, but...
Yeah, but that's very different than an explosive.
I don't know.
I feel like they don't have any experience with anyone attacking from within.
I guess.
And
I would hope... Look, I'm not rooting for detention centers, but I would hope our guards are just a little bit smarter than that.
I would think that they've become complacent, if nothing else, for how long they've been there.
Maybe, but now don't we have a big shakeup at this point? Because we do have these two humans in here, right? And then we have that they've already contacted their ship. The colonel knows it because he contacted them.
Mm-hmm.
Then they respond back to him. They responded back to him and messed up his thing so they can get that tricorder down. I keep calling it a tricorder. The communicator down there. So you would think they would all be on high alert at that point.
You would think, but they're
I would
obviously
hope.
not the sharpest knives in the
Right,
drawer.
so that bothers me because I just think, man, you guys are so dumb you deserve to die.
Oh.
All they do, they blow up the wall on them. They had to have died. You see them fly across the room.
Yeah, well, they might have just been severely concussed.
Nah, they
but
died.
Lived.
I want them
Okay.
to die. In my headcanon, they're dead. At the very least, the guy on the wall was dead. Because the other two were kind of a little farther away. But the guy up on the wall, he's gone. It blew out a 7-inch thick to 12-inch thick concrete wall. He's dead.
Yeah.
D-E-D, dead. And now we have the big fight scene. This is the climax of the whole episode, is when Dean Stockwell attacks Archer. And this is the point where he starts screaming at him, "Don't you know what you've done to them? You're killing them." This is what you
You've
really
just
realize.
given the Cabal 89 new soldiers.
Yes. So what is it, dummy? Is it that they're going to become soldiers and that's what you're afraid of? Or are you protecting them?
Yeah, well, he's protecting them from becoming soldiers.
I guess. Okay. Jerk.
That's how he justifies everything that he does, is by making himself his own hero. But
Yeah, well, in his own mind.
yeah, exactly. Evil people never think that they're evil. They think that they're the hero of their story.
Well, true. I mean, that's
So.
sadly true. But that's what makes it even harder because he's that crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He really thinks that he's right. Not even that what he's doing. See, here's the thing. If he only thought what he was doing was right for him and his race, that's one thing. But he literally thinks he's protecting them, which gives him more conviction to do bad things to them.
It makes no sense, but crazy people never do. And not only that, the irony of it is that isn't this experience more likely to make the Suliban want to join the Cabal?
Of course it is.
And so they would have been better off just leaving them the heck alone. I didn't want to say heck, but I have to. Just leave them be, and chances are there would be fewer Suliban in the Cabal.
Of course there would be. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, the best way to turn these guys into Cabal is to torture them into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, there's going to be some that are going to join anyway, right? It's just the way it is. But you're definitely not helping yourself by grabbing them before they've even had a chance to decide.
Yeah, by just deciding that you're protecting them because they're Suliban.
Right.
And if they're left to their own devices, they'll just automatically join the Cabal.
So the beautiful belief here is that you grab me and my buddies and we don't become Cabal. You might be right. I might be in a detention center for the rest of my life. But what about my family members that you didn't get? Or my best friend that you didn't get? What do you think you did? You pushed him in that direction.
Yeah.
So now you created one of what you don't want. I clearly wouldn't want my best friend to do that with his life. So who won?
Nobody wins in war, ever.
No, it's just, and it's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
And it is what happens time and time again throughout history.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing, is that when people do will commit these sort of atrocities, perpetuate these sort of atrocities, they're always thinking it's for the greater good. And whatever they need to say in their minds to justify that they're the hero, that they're doing the right thing. And yet they never stop to look at it logically. They're always working from emotion, from some kind of emotion, be it hate or fear or what have you. Those kinds of decisions are always based on emotion. They're never based on logic, because anyone actually thinking logically about the situation would know, hey, maybe we shouldn't round up all these people and make them hate us so that they'll want to go join the cabal.
Right, exactly. And if we look through history, you can pretty much pick out that group for every decade as far back as we can write history.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I mean, it happens about every 10 years. It changes who that group is.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find them in every single decade. I can point them out. Sometimes it lasts more than a decade. It's the same people, but typically it changes about every 10. Before it was the whole 9/11 thing triggered it. Before that, it was we had the ex-Soviet bloc were the terrorists, right? And then before that, we had the Soviets. And before that, we could just keep going back and back and back and back and back. And eventually we get to the Romans and the Greeks, and it's the same thing.
And this is probably happening even before recorded history.
Of course it was. We just don't have it written down.
Yeah. As long as humanity has existed. And this is why sometimes I don't think we're ever going to get to that Star Trek future, because we just can't learn.
It is true. I think I don't think it was on this. No, it wasn't. I was on The Edge. We were talking with John Kokorian from Trek Profiles, but he said it best. He said to be a Star Trek fan, really the sad thing is, he didn't say it this way, I'm saying it, but you have to be an optimist, but we don't have to agree on how that turns out, but you have to be an optimist that it will turn out for the betterment of everybody. But the problem is, in my opinion, is you can see in this exact example, what is the betterment of everybody? Yeah. Is it rounding up Suliban and throwing him in detention centers? I don't believe that at all.
Yeah,
there are people out there who do.
How do you define what the betterment is?
Right. Unfortunately, the betterment of all people has to be a consensus, and that's not going to happen.
It's not, because what's better for some is not better for others.
You and I can't agree on possibly how to run a McDonald's, let alone a country or a world.
We definitely couldn't agree on that. But the thing, I can paint it in very broad strokes. I believe that everyone deserves equal rights. Everyone deserves to have their health be taken care of. Everyone deserves to live as they want to live, provided that their actions aren't hurting or killing other people. But those are extremely broad strokes.
Okay, but here now, I'm just playing devil's advocate. People don't kill me. Here's the problem I see with that, because I actually very much agree with everything you just said, and I can fine-tooth a lot of that. But I could show you people who would say, well, I have a different definition of everyone than you do. I also believe everyone should have freedom, and I think everyone should have the right to health care, and I think everyone should have the right to this. But everyone excludes this, that, and the other thing.
But that's the thing. That's not everyone.
Right. In normal people definition, I agree. But that doesn't mean that everyone agrees with that definition. So we have people that claim to agree that don't even agree. So how could we get people that don't agree to ever agree? Yep, I confused everybody. Thank you. No. Good night.
Well done. And that's going to do it for this episode. I'm just kidding.
Final thoughts? No, shut up, Pat.
Yeah, you do not have any final thoughts. You are not everyone.
I am not part of everyone because I am to Pat. Vulcan rights.
Yeah. Basically, sadly, I think the only thing that would bring us together is that annihilation of World War III and having fewer people around, because I don't understand why humans have to divide themselves into this us versus them thing. I've never understood that, because take away everything else. Take away the color of the skin, our gender, sexuality, religion, political beliefs, etc. Take away all of those things. We are all the same under our skin. Every single one of us. We are all human beings. We are the human race.
And at the end of the day, even if we could do that, and there were only 2 people left on the planet, they'd be punching each other for an extra stone.
Yeah, just like those guys in that let this be your last battlefield, I think it was.
Right. Yeah, let that be the last battlefield. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we could even figure out how to not argue over all the stupid nonsense that people argue over, they'd find something else that was stupid to argue about. Like, I would cut the steak for me and the other person alive, and that person would think mine's bigger.
Yeah, it's just, I don't understand humanity. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really from here.
That would explain a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to say about this episode?
I appreciate the way that this episode was handled. I appreciate Archer and Mayweather having their own biases at first and having to be shown that their biases were actually unfounded, even though the only experience they'd had was with Suliban from the Cabal, which isn't really true because there was that one Suliban whose name I can't remember that they contacted when they were trying to get the Klingon back home in Broken Bow. But anyway, be that as it may, I think one of the things I like the most is how Travis puts it, because the Suliban are, still having problems trusting Archer and Mayweather. And he says, when I first got here, I had the same biases against you. And I learned to look past that. Why can't you? I'm like, fair point, Travis. I appreciate that. So in case no one got the metaphor, Archer actually talks about Japanese internment camps with Travis. And how this reminds me of that a group of people were put in internment camps simply because of their genetic heritage. Right. They were Americans. They weren't Japanese immigrants. They were Americans.
Right, born in America.
Yeah.
And they even make that, sorry to cut your final thoughts off, but they even make that point when the guy says, me and one of the guards, I was friends with his brother. I was born here, and so they really try and drive that home, that this is really, the fear is that we will end up back in this internment camp era. And at the time, this was a very powerful episode. Look, I've said it before. I've said it a million times. It's one of the reasons I love Star Trek Enterprise so much, is that I'm in New York. I witnessed 9/11, and that's what this was. A lot of these episodes, especially once we get to season 3, and all of the season 3 arc, is the reaction to 9/11 and what happened afterwards and what could have happened afterwards. And this is an early episode that is talking about that before we really get to the 9/11 commentary that they make in season 3. Even then we see that Archer goes in and everyone's ready to kill everyone, right? But then they start realizing, Degra's not as bad as I thought, and not all of these guys, they don't all live on the same planet anymore, and maybe the reptiles kind of suck, but the arboreals don't suck as much, and, this isn't the last time this will come up, but this is a very powerful message, very early, very right after 9/11 happened. And the fear was, and there was attacks in New York on mosques and Muslim people just randomly walking down the street. And I don't know of 14 dying in one day or anything like that, but one would be too many, right? Beating up one is too many. Just simply attacking them because of what religion they believe in or how they dressed or what they look like, that's too much. So this was a very good commentary on it. I thought it spoke very well of the way people could have been treated if there weren't enough people saying, well, wait a minute, hold on. Not everybody's a terrorist. Some people are just here. Just because they perverted the religion doesn't mean that all the people who follow the religion feel the same way.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't want all of Christianity being judged by the Spanish Inquisition, would you? No. Or the Crusades?
No, and a large percentage of it could have been at that time.
Yeah, and so those are situations where an extreme has been invoked in that particular religion, and it is not indicative of the religion as a whole, and people just can't seem to freaking get that. So, in any case, I think this is one of the best Star Trek episodes ever. in all of Star Trek, because it's, once again, doing what Star Trek does best and taking social situations that have happened before, are happening right now, etc., and giving us a science fiction perspective on it, so that it just drives that point home even more succinctly.
Couldn't agree more. And what I like about this one the most, over other times that they've done this, is they do not back off their point even a little.
Correct.
Many times they back off at the very end. They throttle it back just enough where they don't really make a choice. You know, like when we had Sim, they don't kill him. He accepts it and decides that he's going to do it, right? So
well, technically, they still do kill him.
No, but not without his permission.
Right. They don't murder him.
Correct. That's a better way of putting it. But
yeah,
they change it just enough that everyone could kind of walk away with a guilt-free conscience, right? And they do this a lot throughout time. Like, even with Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, they just kind of dumped them back off on the planet and let them go at it. And we know at some point one of them killed the other, right? That's just the way it happened. But this time, they don't back off through the whole episode, and they go toe-to-toe. Archer goes toe-to-toe with the Colonel, and they escape, but the point is made. Star Trek draws a line in the sand and says, this is wrong. This is right, and that is wrong.
And Archer still even has some reservations that maybe these people will, because of the way they are treated, go off and join the Cabal. But that doesn't stop him from doing the right thing.
Right. Well, look, we live in a society where you punish people for crimes they've committed.
Exactly. This is not Minority Report. This is not Minority Report, guys.
Exactly, because that was a terrible movie.
It was a terrible movie.
Thank
you for agreeing with me on that. People got really mad when I said that before on something else. Yeah.
Did they only watch one movie in their life?
I don't know. It's a matter of opinion. Someone's worst
terrible.
movie. Yeah, well, someone's worst movie is someone else's favorite. So
I'm not going to the movies with those people ever.
Ever. No, but that's okay. We can go to the movies.
Yes, we will go to the movies.
We will go to the movies and not watch Minority Report.
Absolutely.
Ever again. Yeah, well, talking about Minority Report isn't what we intended to do during this episode of Warp 5. There are other things going on around the network, so have a quick listen at what else you may have missed here on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
I thought it was really funny. Not funny, but sort of weird. A good contrast that she was actually eaten by Klingons, and then later the Emperor in the Mirror Universe is shown eating a Kelpian. I was just saying, either side of either universes, the species are munching on each other.
Oh dear.
One way.
Oh my gosh.
Warp 5.
So we would have cool firefights at this point. We could bang, pew, pew, stuff like that.
Yes.
Well, you can only do so much in a hallway, dude.
What?
I said you can only do so much in a hallway. Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe in the mess hall. There you go.
Have you seen Star Trek? They're always hiding behind some like bulkhead that's just randomly placed in a hallway.
This is true.
They're all over the place.
Earl Grey.
So she's trying to balance this and she's playing along, but she gets to that point where it's like, and I love that scene as well. It's like, now is the time to listen to me. We've tried to do it your way. It hasn't worked. I'm ordering you to do that or I'll eject you into space. And we know how Troy is. Like, she's the last person you'd think who would eject someone into space.
Yes, or even threaten that.
But because she's gotten to this point and is in this perilous situation, I believe that she might actually do it, you know?
Melodic Treks.
But the interesting thing about this episode's score, it was composed by Fred Steiner, who did a lot of episodes for the original Star Trek, but this episode did not have a complete score. In fact, there's only about 10 minutes of music that were actually recorded for this episode, and the rest of it was library material. So we're going to focus today on the music that was recorded specifically for this episode, and some of the fun music that entails.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcast. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcast on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave a star rating and written review. If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps on the Suliban network, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
My dear, darling little boomers, we want to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are so many options for how you can do that. The best place, of course, is to join in the larger conversation on the Babel Conference, which is our listeners group on Facebook. Go to Facebook, to the search field, and type Babel, B-A-B-E-L. And it'll probably be the first thing that comes right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact, choose to send to a show, and select Warp 5, not Minority Report. That will come right to us, and you can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Patrick, when you are not being devil's advocate about what is good for everybody, where can people find you?
Well, I'm always arguing what the term everybody means. But when I'm not doing that, I pop up here and there on the Babel Conference. I haven't had much time to be on there lately, but I should be able to be on there a little more. I'm also on Twitter at MagicDrop5. It is no spaces. The 5 is a number and not a word. And I'm also, you can find me on the network. I pop up here and there on other shows, but every other week you can definitely find me hanging with my buddy Amy over at The Edge. So, Brandi, when you're not setting up explosives on the inside of a prison wall that obviously doesn't kill people even though it blows through 12 inches of concrete, where can people find you?
Well, I'm all about maiming but not killing, so you can find me on Twitter, BrandyWine12. Brandi is with an I, 12 is a number. You can sometimes find me lurking in the Babel Conference. Like Patrick, I don't have a whole lot of time to do that these days, but I do lurk from time to time. You'll hear me pop up every once in a while on the 602 Club. About a week and a half ago, an episode came out that I was on about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, episode number 188. So give that a listen if you've seen the movie. Please don't listen to it if you haven't seen the movie because you will be confused. And I do a podcast with my wonderful husband, Dave. He is wonderful. I love you, Dave. And it's called the Dark Corner Podcast, which you can find at darkcornerpodcast.com, where we talk about whatever the H we want, but mostly a lot of pop culture stuff from a darker lens. There is swearing. Please do not let children listen.
If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron on the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
And at this time, we would love to thank all of our wonderful associate producers for Warp 5, Norman Seelau, Floyd Dorsey, Mike Morrison, Tim Cooper, Justin Ozer, Mark Flessa, and Chris Tribuzio. We thank you so much for your support. Without you, this podcast would not be possible, and we thank you for all that you have contributed. All right, then. I guess that is it for this episode of Warp 5. We hope that Brandon's okay wherever he's being brainwashed, or had his clothes and belongings stolen, or has been knocked out by a woman with a dog, or anyway.
Thunderstorms.
Yeah, all of that. That too. So we wish you well, Brandon. I hope you're safely on Risa by now, and if you're not, well, dude, you do beforehand, really. So that is it. We will see you next week, or actually we will hear from you next week. No, we will talk to you next week here on Warp 5, so keep calm and boom on. did used to question my mother's story that I was born of her. There was an incident in junior high when my accelerated science teacher typed my blood, and I had asked my mother what her blood type was, and she said A. And then I asked her what my dad's blood type was, and she said A. Now, I know the rules of blood types, and if you have parents who are both A blood type, your blood type is A.
Right. Yeah,
there is no way to be anything else. My blood type was B.
Huh.
And I finally had the ammunition to accuse my mother of adopting me and never coming clean about it. She had to go into my science teacher and let him type her blood. Turns out she's B.
Oh, ruined it all.
But there was a space of a few days where I was convinced that I was right because I didn't feel like I looked like anyone else in the family. I certainly didn't act like anyone else in the family, and I was convinced I was an alien or something. But now as I've grown older, I actually look so much like my dad. It's not even
Do you?
funny. Totally do.
Yeah, I'm very clearly my father's son. So
yeah,
there's no question there whatsoever.
But still, every once in a while I wonder, just because we have the same blood type. No, I'm just kidding. No, Mom, I am not accusing you again of adopting me. I'm sorry.
But, my blood type is universal donor. Yay.
You're an O?
Yep.
Oh.
And not the O that can take from everybody, the O that can only give. So.
That's so much fun. You're just like Mad Max.
Yep.
Apropos of nothing.
My phone constantly rings from New York Blood Bank.
They never call me. They're like, no, you have too many problems. Too many problems in your past, honey. We don't want that.
Yeah, they love me. But, all right.